Colin Hall is the only one left alive in humanity's last burning stronghold. A huge explosion tears across the battlefield, slamming our hero to his knees with a blast so strong he can barely catch his breath. The demon lord sneers from the rubble, mocking him as the sole survivor. A grinning figure shouts out Colin's name with total confidence. Colin gets blasted backward, slamming into the ground as the demon's hit lands. Though he's cut up and tired, his eyes still glow with a cold, stubborn fire. The demon lord admits that Colin's refusal to give up, even as the last one standing, impressed him, so he graciously offers to let Colin choose his own way to die. Colin's eyes, shining like fire, go wide as he finally realizes just what is happening. This is the final moment for him, and for all of us. The story jumps back a year to the day demons first invaded, rushing through cities and capturing the royal capital in a shocking hurry. The common soldiers gave it their all, but they were totally outmatched because against these magic-wielding monsters, humanity was just helpless. It turns out magic was a special gift that only people with noble blood could have. And these bloodline supremacists were ready to show off their power to the whole world. They thought they were the chosen heroes and fired off a huge spell to save the day, but fizzled out instantly, proving their proud magic was just useless. It turned out the nobles' greatest magic was barely a game to the demons. Something the proud mages never even thought about. As their own great spell is easily turned back upon them, it explodes in a burst of fire. As the noble watches his grand plan explode in a horrifying blaze, Colin kneels amidst the ruins, bitterly wishing he had found a mysterious book sooner, convinced that holding it would have spared them all from this nightmare. Suddenly back in a room, the demon lord demands to know if you have finally chosen how you want to die. He even drops some scary ideas just to make it worse, but Colin has heard enough of the villain's talk for one lifetime. He knows he has no choice but to pick that last option, leaving the demon lord confused for a split second before Colin unsheathes his blade, lunges forward, and shouts at him to shut up. As Colin's steel sword slams into the demon's effortlessly summoned fireblade, he instantly feels the huge gap in their strength and gets knocked flying by one brutal kick. But Colin lands on his feet, still glaring with pure defiance. Fuming with anger, the demon begins to pull a huge amount of energy into his hands. Colin was mocked for believing his sword skills could ever stand a chance against him. He chuckles, showing that people without the demon god's gift are completely helpless. The demon lord stumbles back, stunned and confused by what just happened. For the first time ever, a human managed to hurt him. Colin explains that a normal fight would never work, tightening his grip as his blade burns with a dangerous blue light. He shows that this power comes with a price paid by his soul and life force to fuel a forbidden sword technique that changes everything. And with that, Colin leaps forward for another fast clash. The demon lord believes he has found a weak spot in the assault, but it is only a slight crack that lets Colin slash right through his arm. The demon lord screams in agony, yet his face burns with fury rather than surrender, as he grabs Colin's blade with his bare hand to halt the strike, then smirks and admits the forbidden sword move is cool, while teasing that a different trick might have actually ended it. Our hero's sword suddenly snaps in two like a dry twig when the demon lord reveals he was just one move away from victory, leaving spiderweb cracks to race across the broken metal. With no weapons left, Colin just stares up as his opponent knocks him flying with one hard hit. Colin slams into the broken ruins, knowing his final attempt has failed. He learned that doing his very best still wasn't enough to win. As the demon lord lifted him up, he sneered that giving up an arm was all humanity could ever manage. As Colin's life slips away, he can only whisper sorry to the friends he failed to save, finally admitting to himself that he has lost as the demon lord grins in victory. With the hero lying helpless in the demon lord's grip, the dark ruler strikes the killing blow. As Colin's blood drips down, it lands on something odd hidden in the rubble. He triggered the huge magic circle, and it exploded into a flash of light so bright it blinded everyone. He is jerked back from the edge of death, leaving him totally bewildered by what just happened. Can't believe he's still walking around after all that. He finds himself all alone in a strange, dreamlike place with no clue about where he is. As he stared around the empty nothingness, he suddenly felt he wasn't truly alone anymore. He spins around and shouts, asking who else is there with him. His eyes go wide as he stares in stunned shock at the impossible thing he just saw. Floating in the dark was the mysterious book he wished he had found much sooner. He stares in shock at the book, realizing it holds magic so powerful that he can hardly believe it. Then, a voice from the book explained that his blood was the key to unlocking its power. Then it gives him the one thing he desires most, a chance to go back and fix everything. Colin is rightfully suspicious because he has no idea who this mysterious being even is. But the chance to get a second try is simply too good to refuse. He sees that if this is true, it's his perfect chance to finally get revenge. The book appeared happy with his reply and promised to stay by his side to teach him the magic needed to finally make his long-held dream come true. As Colin accepts the deal to rewrite history, the book's power surges around him like a living force. His eyes burned with determination as he insisted on seeing the other future. This is the moment he finally gets his revenge, as he is ripped from the void and wakes up in a crowd of chanting fans to find himself in a gladiator's body, facing down a huge opponent. A giant man roars as he swings a hammer, so huge it's bigger than Colin's whole body, knocking our hero into a slave arena where he's left with only a simple sword and shield. Colin just barely dodges the giant's first huge and violent swing. A cold sweat breaks out as he realizes just how bad his starting position is. The crowd is going wild, screaming for more action. Up in the crowd, a nobleman named Viscount Slaw looks impressed that Colin is still standing. He smirks and explains that low-born people are just entertainment for the rich, no different from slaves, which makes Colin realize the noble sees no difference between them at all. The butcher hits hard again to show that they are just pieces in his game. The nobles in the crowd are laughing hard at the show, while the common people are equally eager for the butcher to end Colin's life, and even Slaith wears a wicked grin as he enjoys watching Colin about to be crushed in the arena. While Slaith is still having fun with the show, Colin is locked in on his enemy, proving he's truly back in the past, and leaving the butcher puzzled by his sudden change of heart. Colin suddenly finds himself back in his past as a slave gladiator, feeling a glowing magic circle on his chest as he realizes the ancient book has finally become part of him. If that's true, he finally has a real chance. So, with a surge of fresh strength, he slips past the next blow and vows that from now on, he will change his own damn fate. The butcher freezes in shock as Colin hits him squarely in the chest, sending the giant stumbling backward for the very first time. Colin realizes he can't just use his old tricks to save us from the demons while the crowd goes wild. He must learn every secret spell locked deep inside that old book. Of course, hoping to be free like a slave is just a fantasy. So first he must find a way out of this terrible arena and plan to join the service of Mark Darius Hall. He swears he'll make it happen, and this time way faster than last time. Just then, an old man in the crowd grabs your attention and explains that the regular folks have bet on him to defeat the butcher, who the nobles are rooting for. The old man lunges forward, begging Colin to throw the match because he is so scared of Slath that he begs Colin to lose on purpose, warning that if he refuses, the old man will have to face the Viscount's anger. This proved Colin right. SLE is using him to rig the noble's bets, so with a wild grin, he stands over the butcher's defeated body and demands the next opponent be sent in right away. The nobles who backed the butcher are now screaming in rage, furious over the huge piles of gold they just lost on what they thought was a guaranteed win. As Slaith's loyal assistant frantically tries to calm everyone by claiming the shocking upset was just part of the Viscount's master plan, Marquis Darius Hall marvels at how powerful and precise Colin's last strike was, only for Slaith to secretly steal all the credit by reminding everyone that Colin is his best slave after all. Down in the arena, Colin is already fighting his next opponent without even taking a breath. Asith reveals his true scheme. He's pumping up the excitement just to lure them into betting even bigger. His man calmly tells the furious nobles that everything is going exactly as planned, and promises that next time they will watch Colin get completely torn apart. But Colin shocks everyone with another impossible win, sending the crowd into a frenzy. Left speechless as his whole plan backfires, the other nobles instantly turn on him and accuse him of setting them up to be cheated. Now is sweating in confusion, trying to figure out Colin's plan. Slaith is so furious he's screaming to drag all the gladiators out at once. As Darius Hall, the star of the show, watches the mess unfold, he just finds it hilarious. Down below, a fresh wave of fighters is shoved into the arena to challenge Colin, who remembers that in his first life, he never made it to the big stage. But this time, he's certain he can do it, knowing that just winning won't get him into the hall, so he decides to put on a real show by daring the whole group to attack him at once, sending the crowd into a frenzy. The gladiators rush at him from every angle, but Colin stands calm and steady, not even flinching at how many there are. He easily jumps over the stunned gladiators just as a huge axe crashes down and breaks the stone floor where they stood. They couldn't even figure out how he moved so fast, leaving them defenseless, so Colin jumped in and knocked one of them down in an instant. A fresh rush of warriors charges him with spears to hold him fast, yet he casually stops a flying mace using just his foot as if it were no big deal. He uses the stuck weapon like a spring to jump forward and slice right through the spearmen before they can even blink. The final gladiator roars and slashes his giant sword down at him, but Colin just stares back with dead eyes, waiting for what comes next. Colin doesn't dodge. He grabs the giant blade with his bare hands, uses his new power to stop it dead, and then smashes the sword apart with one strong hit. Every time a gladiator falls, the whole stadium freezes in stunned silence, especially Count Slaith. Colin then throws the broken hilt right past the Viscount's head, smashing it into the wall behind him to send a very clear message. Slaith is screaming in terror as he realizes this wasn't an accident, while Colin just stands there having taken over the whole arena. Now utterly humiliated, he vows to make Colin pay for making him look like a fool. The other nobles watch as Mark Hall smirks at the chaos, boasting that his little betting scheme has totally collapsed. One of the other nobles insists that La Slaith must put Colin to death for his bold defiance, especially since he dared to challenge a noble right before Mark Darius Hall. The Grand Sign mockingly ignores the common sense of the lesser nobles, who now sweat nervously under its sharp gaze. Right then, another mighty noble steps up to face the Marquis head-on, waving his own magic around as he questions Hall's beliefs. He begins a lecture on how magic was a gift from God 1,000 years ago, setting up a divine order where nobles acted as God's chosen messengers. He then blames the Marquis for its twisted beliefs, saying it refuses to keep this holy promise. Colin just scoffed at the whole divine right speech, clearly unimpressed, which shocked the other nobles when Mark Hall asked what was wrong with challenging that idea. They instantly fly into a screaming rage, furious that a lowly slave dares to mock the will of God. That's when Colin steps forward, draws his sword, and yells out Viscount Slaith's name, daring the Count to fight him personally if he truly believes he is God's agent, sending the whole crowd into a frenzy as they realize our boy has just signed his own death warrant. Even the other nobles couldn't stop staring in shock at the slave's crazy nerve for daring to challenge them. While everyone else is taking this turn of events hard, Mark Hall seems to be the only one having fun with it. Finally, he steps forward, burning with rage at the slave who dares to mock God and ruin his plans, then roars as he gathers magic to unleash his fury in a duel. Just then, the magic book in Colin's hands glows as it senses the incoming power, popping up a status window that shows he's only a beginner with low talent, while the clueless Slaith vows to send Colin to the afterlife for his rudeness, and Colin just stands there watching the attack grow with a look of total calm. The Viscount unleashes a swirling wall of wind that the hall's magic instantly identifies as a deadly blade. The other nobles get excited and start placing bets on just how many pieces they can imagine being cut from Colin. Colin holds his breath as swirling blades of wind rush toward him, ready to tear him apart. Slaith screams at Darius to watch, showing how much stronger a noble is than a slave. Colin just smirks, knowing that's just beginner wind magic. The new window shows the tome has given him magic resistance, making Slaith's powerful attack useless and leaving him thrilled that this surprise skill is already working for him. Compared to real demon magic, this feels like a total joke, and he shouts that an attack this weak means nothing to him. Slaith is so shocked that a slave would treat him with such disrespect that he can barely believe it. The other nobles are just as stunned by his boldness. Colin doesn't even think twice before running right into the swirling wind, leaving Slaith yelling that it can't be done, but Colin comes through the other side, completely fine. Before the Viscount can even figure out what's going on, Colin jumps right on top of him and hits him so hard that the noble's sword flies out of his hand. The punch lands true, blowing the air from Viscount's lungs and sending him crashing to the arena floor, completely beaten. Just as he celebrates his victory, the tome within him senses new magic nearby, and suddenly a giant purple circle bursts from the ground, while shadowy skeletal hands shoot up from the dirt to grab his legs. More vines burst out and wrap around his arms and body, pinning him down while he fights desperately, but can't break free. Just as a group of knights arrives to announce they are responding to the report. The lead knight shouts that Colin's defied a noble and insulted God, so he orders his men to arrest the fighter in God's name as they surround the restrained man. It turns out these guys are the Divine Guard, an elite squad from the Magic Tower. A group formed just to make sure the families with the best blood stay on top. They are composed of the mightiest lords, towering far above the common crowd. Colin could snap these magical bonds like dry twigs if he chose to, but he's holding back his true power for now, so the people in charge don't see the full extent of what he can do. Knowing he has nothing to lose, he throws everything on the line in one huge, all-or-nothing bet. And then, with a loud shout, he announces who he is. Saying he is Colin Hall, the son of Marquis Darius Hall, he is shouting for them to let him go. The knights instantly go into a panic, realizing who they might have just taken prisoner. Even the other nobles are stunned by this sudden news, because no one in the crowd has ever heard that the Marquis has another son. Colin stands calmly, trusting that the Divine Guard will never dare touch someone like him. Now all he can do is wait and see if this crazy risky bluff holds up, but the noble who scolded him before isn't buying it. He has drawn his sword, screamed that pretending to be a noble is a crime punishable by death on the spot, and is charging forward. Just as the blade is about to strike, a loud voice shouts, "Wait!" And it turns out to be Mark Darius Hall making a dramatic entrance. The attacking noble stops in his tracks, stammering that he was just about to get rid of the insolent slave. Mark Hall suddenly grabs Colin by the throat and screams that he has shamed the family, leaving the Divine Guard frozen in shock and the noble ready to strike, completely baffled by the chaos. The Marquis tightens his grip on Colin, scolding him for failing to learn his lesson. Instead of learning his lesson, he only made things worse by causing even more trouble, specifically by getting into a fight with Viscount Slith, a move that turned out to be a terrible mistake. Colin just smirks at everything, convinced deep down that he's going to win this bet no matter what happens. In that very moment, Markwheel looks at the defeated Viscount Slith and offers a formal apology for all the trouble his foolish son has caused him. Colin screams that Slith started it, but the Marquis's furious silence shuts him down as he declares he will discipline his son himself and ends the show, only for another noble to roar in protest, vowing to stop the act and finish Colin right there instead of letting a slave be taken away. And with that, he lunges forward, sword drawn and ready to strike. Colin just watches him approach with a smirk that says he's not impressed at all. Colin just smirks, reminding the noble that he promised to attack no matter what anyone said. He even asked if the Lord of the Rhine standing there, or the Divine Guard sent to arrest him in God's name, counted as part of it. He turns the man's own words back on him, accusing the guy of plotting to rebel against both the Lord and the Guard. The noble panics so hard he drops his sword and stammers that it was a misunderstanding, just as the skeleton unbinds Colin and the lead knight steps forward to explain the whole mess. He even gives a proper sorry for how he acted before saying they're heading out now. Before leaving, the knight turns to the nervous Count Slith and assures him that a full report of everything will be sent to the magic tower. Slith is told he'll find out his punishment later, and it fills him with absolute terror. Colin finally sighs in relief, his huge risk having paid off completely. As the Divine Guard walks off, the lead knight orders his team to find out everything they know about Colin. One asks if he means the Marquis's son, keeping the story going, while another wonders how such a powerful lord could hide a secret child from everyone. This lead knight, though, makes it clear he doesn't believe for a second that Colin is the famous son. His confused team stared at Colin, noting how calm he remained while the Marquis seemed to shield him. Their boss sighs and says this is a weird setup, so he orders his team to watch Colin closely for now. Once their orders are clear, the Divine Guards officially leave the arena. With the chaos of the arena left behind, Marquis Hall chuckles as his carriage rolls through the countryside, hauling him and his new son away while he praises Colin for an incredible performance. But inside, the silence stretches between them until Colin finally breaks it to thank Marquis and reveal that Darius Hall even bought out his slave contract, officially making him a free man. The sign then turns serious and asks Colin if he has ever fought on a real battlefield, noting that his smooth movements looked too perfect for a slave and more like a battle-hardened warrior. Colin starts telling a tale about how he was born in a faraway village and then sold into slavery by the people he grew up with. A noble bought him, taught him magic and how to fight, treated him like a son, and finally gave him a purpose he never had before. He says the man gave him a big dream, but in the end, he couldn't make it come true. So now, no matter what comes his way, he is determined to live up to that man's expectations, swearing he will succeed, even if it means giving his very life. The Marquis listens closely, realizing it holds the key to Colin's magic power and unbreakable spirit. So it begins to believe that this young man, who sees his own dreams in Colin's fierce drive, is the only one who can help him. Just as the attendant shouts that they've made it, the carriage rolls to a stop before the huge, fancy gates of House Hall, meaning they have finally arrived at their grand destination. The Marquis calls out to Colin, officially inviting him to join the big leagues and confirming that he is finally free, which is a wonderful bonus. But he warns him that this doesn't mean he has earned a peaceful life. In this world, only the toughest live on, and Colin has just begun his journey. Standing at the grand entrance, the sign says his help stops right here, so whether Colin can beat the next challenge depends entirely on him. Colin just stares back, ready for whatever new game this is. The Marquis smiles, showing that it has big hopes for the new Colin Hall. And with that, he steps away, leaving Colin to face his new life alone. It turns out the noble families are crazy about keeping their magic pure through bloodlines, and the Hall family is the most obsessed with it, except for one person. Darius Hall, born to a servant mother and constantly faced with unfair treatment, stood alone in his story. But with nothing but raw strength, he fought his way up from the bottom to become a duke and the undisputed ruler of the Rhinelands. Colin walks through the mansion's grand hall with the Marquis beside him, who tells him his past doesn't matter at all here. In this house, only strength is worth anything. The Marquis promises to hand over wealth, status, and honor, the very things nobles die for, to anyone who can prove they have the skills to earn them, and Colin is about to find out if he truly has what it takes. The big sign tells Colin to name his price, and he instantly grabs hold of that one magical word, anything. With a dead serious look, he decides to aim for the impossible and asks to be given the Marquis' own seat as the lord of the territory. A request so bold it leaves Darius Hall stunned for a heartbeat, only for the Marquis to burst out laughing instead of getting mad. I'm challenging Colin. If he thinks he's brave enough, he's welcome to come and try to take it from me. Colin realizes that Darius is a fair-minded soul who believes everyone deserves a chance, which makes him a lonely figure among the proud and selfish nobles. As the Marquis finally walks into his grand mansion, a voice greets him. But Darius knows his true enemies are hiding right here, beyond the safety of the walls. His own family is right here, waiting for him. His wife Katrina and eldest son Fried tell him they've heard the news about the arena incident, with Katrina casually noting that a little bird had filled her in on everything. She offers a smug, self-satisfied grin at the fact that her secret contacts are watching, which makes the man on the stage feel like he's being followed, even though he knows it. Katrina stands tall among her people, looking absolutely spoiled and full of joy, just like a cat who has finally gotten the cream. Colin sees her and realizes it's Countess Katrina Williams, the woman who destroyed his life in the past. It turns out she inherited her own title and wealth, so she is now a true equal in this home. She's already planning to make her son the heir, but Colin vows he won't fall for that trap again. Colin steps up with a proud grin, happily declaring his welcome to the family as Colin Hall and promising to serve them all. Fried, the eldest son, instantly snaps whenever anyone uses the family name, angrily asking who this nobody thinks they are to even speak it. Katrina is just as angry and shouts for Cornell, who runs right up to her, and she sneers to ask if he's been ignoring the new people's lessons. Cornell just stands there in silence, knowing exactly what that quiet threat means. Before anyone could act, Colin drew his sword, claimed the blade was a gift from the Marquis, pointed it right at them, and demanded if they had any say in the Lord's decision. He then digs in his heels and promises that one day he will be the Lord who makes everyone bow. Katrina is left speechless by his boldness, while Fried is about to blow up with anger. While the Marquis lounges and revels in the chaos, the other servants huddle together to whisper that a slave like him speaking so boldly is nothing but nonsense. Katrina clears her throat with a quiet sound that makes the whole hall freeze in fear, but Colin doesn't flinch an inch as he stares right back. She stares him down with angry, glowing eyes, convinced a mere slave must learn his lesson, so at Katrina's signal her men charge to grab Colin, only for Marquis to shout a sudden halt before they touch him. He doubles down, proving Colin right and confirming his title is real. The shocking announcement leaves his son frozen in disbelief, unable to believe his father would make such a bold claim right in front of everyone. Darius just give him a look that clearly shows the choice is over. Seeing she can't win directly, Katrina smoothly switches tactics, acting like she's giving up while quietly setting her next trap. She points out that hundreds of servants work hard without ever getting a family name, so a random stranger calling himself Hall is a huge insult that the whole household will never accept. Her plan is to give Colin a simple test, where failing means he's out of the house forever, but Colin sees right through it and shuts her down instantly. Fred eagerly mocks him, but Colin smirks and flips the game around by declaring that only the winner gets to keep their name, leaving Fred exposed as a failure. The public humiliation sends the eldest son into a blind rage, for he has never been insulted before in his entire life. Fred is going crazy thinking about fighting his servants for his inheritance. But his mother, Katrina, quickly places a hand on his shoulder and tells her son to snap out of it. She tells him that a true noble stays graceful and won't lose his temper over a monkey when he has the power of magic on his side. Colin just sits and watches this little family moment, thinking they should all relax and enjoy the show. Katrina shoots a confident smirk, showing she has finally tamed her son's fiery temper. The Marquis actually said yes to Colin's crazy idea, and in just 1 month, they'll let anyone try out. Until then, Colin must work as a lowly servant, a job that feels a bit too humble for him, but he sees it as a chance to finally study his magic book. As he walks alongside the butler Cornell, the man notes that Colin seems to know exactly how to win over the Marquis. Cornell warns that Darius's noble dreams mark him as a target, bringing up the earlier tale Colin shared about being taken in by another lord. He then pointed out a big flaw in the story, noting that the slave traders claimed they bought him straight from a remote village. Cornell throws his cards on the table, claiming it's too perfect that an ideal replacement for Darius just happens to appear right now. Colin's face turns hard as Cornell presses his point, holding a blade to Colin's chin and asking if all this isn't just a little too much of a coincidence. Colin spoke his name calmly, without even blinking at the threat. He admits Cornell is right to be wary, but warns him that these corrupt slave traders who fix fights won't let him walk away after ruining their whole scheme. Cornell finally sees that the slave traders were lying about Colin being just average when his amazing skills show he is truly elite. We quickly learn that the Empire's strict ranking system means most people can only reach the middle level, making master swordsmen and mages incredibly rare. Even nobles rarely practice with swords, yet the Royal Guard makes them standard issue. This butler pieced together the merchant's dirty trick of lying to him so they could have Colin quietly removed from the story for good. Colin just smirks, admitting he was caught and offering to clear the air. They argued that a true spy would never make such a loud move to aim for the Lord's seat, because their job is to blend in and find weaknesses, not to paint a target on their back. And if he were really trying to get close to the Marquis, he'd be coming for Cornell's job as the head butler instead. After all, swapping places with the butler would let him spy on the family easily, so Colin turns the tables by offering a deal to hunt down any spies among the servants. In exchange, he demands Cornell's complete support, even if it means becoming enemies with other nobles. He calls it a dangerous gamble because if the big star crashes, they all fall with him. Cornell is impressed by the kid's strength and sharpness, but the deal feels too perfect, so he suspects Colin is hiding another plan. For now, Cornell plays along and offers to show Colin around his new room. Colin just offers a knowing smile, accepting the peace for now. And so, they step into the dark, towering Hall family mansion and head deeper inside. Cornell asks Colin to choose his new room, explaining that Katrina built the strict servant ranks in the house herself. The top servants get to work right beside the family. The middle ones are allowed to live in the main house, but the bottom ones are locked inside the annex and never let into the building. They spend their days doing the hard, boring work for just 3 copper coins, and Colin is sent to that same job with one very important rule to learn before he starts. He has to follow his senior servants without asking a single question. Just on cue, he's welcomed by a crew of guys who look more like dangerous thugs than servants, and they're already glaring at him with clear trouble in the air. Cornell tells him that Katrina has planned this whole thing to leave him all alone and helpless. The butler walks off with a smug grin, leaving Colin to simmer over that one strict rule: obey them no matter what. Cornell brings Colin to meet his new teammates, who quickly learn that the shy boy is really just trying to be friendly and start things off right. The other servants refuse to accept it and start mocking his name right away. One of them snarked, "So, are you the big future lord everyone's been talking about?" Another steps right up to his face, reminding him that he already had a clash with Katrina and ended up being set free. The ringleader cracks his knuckles and smashes a bottle to show exactly how he plans to teach them a proper greeting. The ringleader commands Colin to fall to his knees and beg for forgiveness over and over again, as someone else leans in close and shouts at him to hurry up and start working. This guy makes the classic mistake of grabbing Colin by the collar. But our boy doesn't waste a second, instantly twisting the man's arm with brutal efficiency. The other thugs just stand there in shock as their buddy gets crushed by Colin before he sends him flying across the room with one mighty throw. The man hits the ground in a heap and loses consciousness before he even touches it. Colin sneered coldly and said that if this is what they want, he won't hold back. He grabs the next guy by the head, mockingly says, "I am sorry, sir," while slamming the man's face against the hard floor again and again. The last few servants are frozen in shock by the sheer speed and violence, until the leader finally loses it and screams for them to kill him. They clutch whatever scraps they can find as makeshift weapons and rush forward together. Colin just calmly grabs a wooden practice sword from a nearby rack. The first enemy gets hit hard and sent flying through the air, landing in a heap and ending up knocked out instantly. He then slips under a swinging chair and lands a brutal kick on the next guy's face, sending the last thug flying backward and knocking him out before he can even scream. In just a few seconds, only the bruised and bloody boss of the gang is left standing. Colin pushes the wooden sword tip against his throat to finally end this silly greeting. Colin shoves the sword against the man's throat and asks if he's satisfied, leaving the terrified wrangler to stutter a yes. As soon as the greetings ended, Colin turned away from the chaos, but the thug wasn't finished making bad decisions yet. He snatches a broken bottle to make a desperate move and charges, screaming that he's done for Colin, but our hero sidesteps and disarms him with cold efficiency, leaving the man clutching his useless hand in pain. Colin kept walking with no change in his face at all. He thinks this small show will keep Cornell happy for now, but he knows nothing is sure about what comes next. Sitting alone in his new room, he finally reaches for the magic book he had been hiding. Realizing he must learn magic to truly protect himself, a flashback reveals that when Katrina married the Marquis, she fired the whole staff, so Darius made his trusted friend Cornell the butler to keep her in line. Cornell doesn't just hold the power, but it also gets the special privilege of picking the next leader. Colin knows from his past life that Cornell died a tragic death, which allowed Katrina to take power and make Freed her heir. Back in the present, Colin realizes that things went wrong because Cornell died, so he dives into the book to learn basic magic right away. As he touches the book, a wild rush of magic blasts into him, filling his mind with sharp pain and seizing his body while a dark, armored knight appears in his vision, screaming orders to destroy and obey. A dark force was working hard to crush his spirit. He fights hard against the crushing weight, asking himself if this is the real cost of learning magic. Suddenly, he remembered a girl telling him to just feel the gentle flow, and he gritted his teeth with a sarcastic thought about how easy life must be for nobles. But the more impossible the task seems, the more he gets pumped up for the fight. He pours every bit of his strength into fighting back against the book's dark magic, refusing to let this ancient power control him no matter the cost. With one last surge of will, he finally breaks through the challenge. Suddenly, a flash of bright light explodes from his room, showing that his hard training is finally over. The next morning, while the other servants were busy washing clothes, two thugs from yesterday saw someone coming and instantly realized it was the new guy, Colin. He walks out yawning and casually tells them they could have tried to kill him while he slept, but adds with a smirk that it wouldn't have helped them anyway. He glances at his new status and sees he's a beginner mage with Grandmaster sword skills. Colin wakes up with a confident smirk, knowing his night of magic training was a total success, and his very first thought is to find something to eat. As he steps outside, he sees a squad of guards clearing the courtyard while all the other servants bow their heads in fear, and one guard shouts at them to keep looking down or they will get hurt. Right then, a young servant with a bucket trips right in front of them and stops dead, realizing his big mistake is already too late. The guard shoves him so hard that the water bucket flies across the floor and splashes right onto the boots of their eye-patch-wearing lieutenant. The guard who shoved him immediately starts yelling at the kid for being careless, while the frightened servant begs for forgiveness, saying he just wasn't looking. The lieutenant takes the apology and says, if it was just an accident, there's nothing we can do. But right as the servant says thank you, the man's face twists into something truly cruel. He leans in with a creepy smile and whispers quietly, but then he grabs the kid by the head, warns that looking the wrong way isn't allowed, and immediately delivers a violent punishment right there in front of everyone. The other servants stand frozen in horror, watching the sudden violence unfold. One of the guards snaps at the crowd, furious that anyone is watching, and screams for them all to drop to their knees with orders to obey instantly. Everyone sat down except Colin, who stood there wondering what he'd have for breakfast. One of the guards immediately shouts for his boss, pointing Colin out as the man who ruined his hand and warning the lieutenant that Colin is totally out of his mind. The lieutenant finally speaks to the only one who refused to kneel, shouting for Colin, who simply turns around without a single sign of fear. He sees the lieutenant's friends and asks if they want their hands broken, but the eye-patch-wearing sadist just laughs while his men draw their swords, claiming they believe in an eye for an eye. Colin calmly offers them a choice, gripping his practice sword and asking if they'd rather keep their arms or their heads. The lieutenant smirks, admitting he isn't desperate enough to face Colin himself, so he steps aside and lets someone else take the job. Colin squinted his eyes when someone new walked into the courtyard to challenge him. The lieutenant introduced a man named Daku, who used to be a champion fighter in the slave arena. Our boy is totally shocked to run in his old friend right here, in a place he never expected to see him. A memory shows them fighting side by side like sworn brothers, so close they could share the joy of every hard-won victory. Back in the present, Colin remembers how those same guards were bullying Daku just moments ago and asks his old friend if he's truly going to fight for them. Daku simply lays down the rules. Juniors must listen to seniors, and those who break the rules face punishment. Colin realizes they are both just pieces on a board, with Daku forced into the role of the bad guy. Colin just smirks, looking completely unimpressed by the whole mess. While Daku stands ready, he is forced into a pointless fight. He stares with a hard look, understanding he must obey. But the lieutenant is about to discover that Colin ignores every rule, because in a blink he shouts that he will break them like glass, disappears, and suddenly appears behind the lieutenant with the man's own sword pressed against his throat. Daku stood frozen, staring down at his empty hand, realizing in a heartbeat that he had been caught completely off guard. This lieutenant starts to sweat, trying to scare Colin by claiming that Freed has his back, bragging that he was picked out personally and that the gods are cheering him on. He warns that going against him makes enemies of everyone in the house, but Colin just pushes the blade harder, showing he doesn't care at all. The lieutenant agrees to step back for now, but he can't let this slide, so instead of going after Colin right away, he cruelly orders his men to punish Daku instead. And they instantly switch on the old champion, giving him a savage beating. Colin is shocked by the sudden, cruel twist when the lieutenant sneers that he will teach this trash a lesson first. So while his men stand over Daku's broken body with swords ready for more, the lieutenant drives a blade straight through his hand and pins him to the floor. The lieutenant sneers that Daku threw away his only chance by driving the blade right through his hand. He warns his prisoner that if he fails again, the consequences will be much worse. But before he can finish, Colin bursts into action with a sudden rush of energy, leaving Daku standing frozen in shock as his friend moves with unbelievable speed. Colin slices through the guards in one swift move, taking them all down at once. Seeing a chance to win, the lieutenant sneers, raises his sword for a fatal strike, and calls Colin a traitor, only to find himself face to face with Colin, who blocks the blow so easily that the lieutenant's blade snaps in half, leaving him staring in shock at the broken hilt in his hand. Colin tells him in a cold voice that next time, his sword won't be the only thing breaking, so the panicked lieutenant tries to stop his men from letting Colin move, but Colin is already moving again, just in time to watch another guard try to finish off the pinned Daku. With one swift block, Colin knocks the attacker back and saves his friend, but Daku just shouts at him to stop, claiming he only makes things worse. Colin looks from Daku's wounded hand to the servant who was punished. Then with a grim face, he tells the guards this is their last chance to leave for Daku's sake. So he orders them out, and they go. Once they are alone, Colin asks Daku why he didn't fight back even though he's stronger, but Daku angrily warns him that defying the lieutenant means he's already dead. Dao shoves Colin away in a rage for messing things up, then hurls the sword back at him and tells him to take that bad luck right back with him. Colin just stands there holding two swords and wondering what he did wrong, right until the lieutenant snaps, calls Daku an idiot for making him look foolish, and then grabs Daku, shoves his head into a nearby bucket of water, holds him there as a brutal punishment for failing orders, kicks him away, and tells him to get out of his sight. One guard questions if the lieutenant is truly letting Colin walk away, but the lieutenant just laughs it off and tells his men to shout that Colin has declared war on the senior servants. He's plotting to cut our boy off from everyone, making all the people on the estate turn against him. Colin can only beg his old friend to stop fighting, while far away, the nobles feast and pray for peace as maids serve them. Two maids chat excitedly about one dreaming of becoming a senior servant, believing it proves their prayers for a better life are coming true. Down in the courtyard, the lowly servants are told to be thankful for what they have. They line up for their skimpy bowl of thin soup, only to watch a senior servant scoop up his own meal before anyone else gets a chance to move forward. In that instant, Colin finally shows up, simply thrilled to get his hands on some food. The whole yard falls dead quiet, as he wonders why everyone is staring at him. Just as Colin tries to grab his bowl of soup, an old servant snatches it away and says, "No work means no food." Colin just stares straight ahead, totally unbothered by the crowd of servants watching him. Instead of causing a scene, he calmly stretches and walks away. The others stand there puzzled, trying to guess where he's going until they see he's marching straight toward the senior servant's private dining terrace. He shoves past the fancy workers, telling them to get out of his way, which instantly makes one of them shout for someone to deal with this rude slave. Everyone stares in disbelief, guessing what his plan is, as he walks right up to their table and, without saying a word, grabs a piece of bread and begins to eat. The bossy man says this zone is just for top servants, but another guy gets so angry he shouts that Mr. Cornell should punish Colin right now. Cornell just gives Colin a long, calculating look before calmly saying that newcomers are meant to make mistakes and invites him to come along. The other servants stand stunned as Cornell leads Colin away, and once they are alone, he asks if Colin has forgotten the rule about absolute obedience. Colin casually waves off the question, saying it isn't the real problem, because his lord promised him a proper meal in return for his skills, and he's certainly skilled enough to deserve one. He then grabs the offer, promising that from now on, he'll go to Cornell with the bills paid for by the school. Cornell's face turns dark, warning that Colin must hunt for a hidden spy on the estate, while the lord heads out for an odd early hunt to to investigate a strange disturbance in the deep forest. Colin chews on his stolen bread, hears a tiny clue, and a smirk shows he has found his next spot. A short time later, he steps into the woods and finds a scary black deer with glowing red eyes. He snaps his wrist, sending a perfect hit straight into its side. He stood tall and smiling, looking mighty proud as the beast finally fell. He steps forward with his sword drawn to grab his prize, landing one last hit just in case the creature tries to get back up. As he looked closer, his eyes began to glow, feeling something hidden inside. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a glowing purple orb that holds the heart of a monster. A quick glimpse tells us these cores are perfect for crafting spells and brewing potions. Even though this plant is low rank, it's perfect for brewing mana potions. When he spoke with Cornell, he found out that only guards and knights are allowed into the hunting grounds. Colin sees the easy fix right away. Just join the guard squad. Back in the present, he's ready to keep hunting when someone suddenly shouts at him, "Stop." And there's an angry kid in armor, furious that a lowly servant is hunting where he absolutely shouldn't be. Colin just glanced back, completely unbothered by the confrontation. Instead of explaining, Colin simply tells the kid he's borrowing the kill for a moment, and before the boy can even react, Colin snatches the sword right out of his hand. Without hesitation, he grabs the guard's own sword to end the deer's life, then hands the blade back and tells the boy that the animal is now truly his. The guard is going crazy over this twisted logic, muttering to himself about being stuck with a low-ranked servant on such an important mission. It turns out all of this was Cornell's idea, and the kid isn't happy about it, proving he's on official mission with Cornell's dagger as his only proof. Colin explains that they both need to help the Lord find food, which just makes the guard even more fed up with being stuck with such a guy. He chooses to walk right past Colin and keep his eyes only on the mission that matters to him. After the hunt was a success, they brought home a large, fresh side of meat. This kid thinks he's about to get promoted to full guard if he pulls off this task, so he's getting all pumped up, only to discover Colin has already built a campfire and started cooking their supplies. He storms over, furious at Colin's boldness, screaming that the food belongs to the Lord, not a servant, but Colin, already chewing, just laughs and offers him a piece of the hot meat, only for the guard to panic and cry out that the vice captain is his enemy and he would never eat his food. Colin smirks at the boy, telling him that servants only get to eat once every 3 days. So since he's in trouble for losing his sword, his next meal is a long way off. He even argues in a crooked way, claiming he can't guard the Lord on an empty belly and swearing he won't tell a single soul about this secret snack break. The guard finally gives in, claiming it's needed for the mission and the Lord, which makes Colin wonder why someone so strong lets the vice captain push him around. This kid questions why strength matters in their world, insisting that nobles hold divine power only because their faithful ancestors earned it. He worked his butt off just to make his little sister proud, so he's furious that someone would throw all that away just to prove a point. He stubbornly claims that serving others is a blessing and that hard work without asking questions is the only way, but Colin just rolls his eyes at the idea of knowing your place, mocking the idea of divine power as nothing more than a trick until the guard gets angry and challenges him to prove it by teaching a spell. Colin stares the kid right in the eyes and asks what he'd say if he taught him magic right now, leaving the kid frozen by how bold that offer really was. He struggles to catch the question about Colin's magic, and the words hang in the air between them for a moment. Before Colin could reply, a huge roar tore through the woods, making them both jump as they spun around to see what monster could make such a scary noise. The roar came from a pack of ghostly wolves, and they're already ripping into the Lord's hunting party while its captain frantically tries to keep his men from falling into chaos. He seriously underestimated these monsters, and now his team is paying the heavy price. These wolves are so fast they smash right through the defenses and bring down another guard. Captain Glenn is barely keeping his elite team together as they get torn apart by monsters, so he punches one hard just as he realizes there are still way too many left. Right as he's looking away, one of his men yells out that something is coming up behind him, and then it's revealed that he is completely trapped by 3 of those creatures. With nowhere to run, Glenn gets ready to die until suddenly an arrow shoots out of nowhere and hits a leaping wolf right in the middle of its jump. Another arrow flies to bring down a second wolf, saving Colin and the kid who arrive just in time to help out. Colin instantly knows these creatures are azure flame wolves, whose parts are worth a fortune. Most of all, he knows these beasts drop powerful monster cores, which is exactly what he's hunting for. He smirked and promised that none of these walking paychecks would escape him. He doesn't play it safe. Instead, he charges straight at the center of the crowd. This captain just stands there in shock, totally baffled to see such a silly mistake. Colin just laughs in their faces, saying they're useless trash that can't hunt unless they stick together. He lifts his bow with a bold smile, shouting that none can stand against him, and releases a rain of arrows that fells many beasts in one breath. Colin's eyes shine with pure focus, showing he isn't scared at all by the beasts charging at him. He almost laughs as the wolves keep charging at him, ignoring how their friends are falling, because they clearly don't realize how much stronger he is, and he slips away from their desperate attacks without even getting winded. With another perfect shot, the wolf drops dead right before the stun guards, who can barely believe what they are seeing as Colin just scoffs at them, treating the beast like nothing more than a simple animal. Just as he mentions seeing the rest of the pack circling him from the woods, he keeps shooting without a single worry. Captain Glenn can't believe it when this servant charges through the monsters that once wiped out his whole team. Colin's focus suddenly shifts as he barely avoids a fierce blast of blue energy. It seems the pack's true leader has finally stepped out, and this one looks far smarter and more dangerous than the rest. In a flash, a hail of ghostly arrows flies at him, but Colin flips through the air to dodge, fires his own arrows while spinning, and uses his bow to block the alpha beast's sudden charge. He kicks the creature's head to put some space between them, lands safely on his feet a few yards away, then pulls out his sword to face it alone. Colin shoots the last arrow to bring down the alpha wolf for good, while the young guard Daku watches closely, vowing to stay sharp, and Lord Darius gives them a proud thumbs up for saving the day. Daku feels a bit overwhelmed by the noble's sudden praise, but Captain Glenn steps up to compliment their skill and ask who they work for. Colin steps forward to introduce Daku as a backup guard and himself as a humble servant, revealing that they were sent by Cornell to help the Lord in his investigation. Glenn is shocked that Cornell sent a weak team for this job, and one of his men even mocks the old man for picking them. Daku freezes in shock as he hears the rude insult, while Colin casually notes that the monster core he just carved is only mid-rank. He was already thinking about using it to brew a spell from his magic book. But one guard named Marvin instantly starts shouting at him, demanding to know who gave a servant the right to touch their kill. Captain Glenn tells Marvin to stop fighting because their mission is more important. Colin calmly wonders if calling his savior a brat is really the smart thing to do right now. Marvin's angry comeback makes him lose his temper completely while Glenn struggles to hold him back. Colin shoots Marvin a cold glare to make sure he remembers him, while over in the big hall, the Marquis stares hard at a dark painting on the wall. That bright sign brings back the names of his most trusted knights, Glenn, Marvin, and even Cornell. It turns out Colin remembers everything from his past life, including how their deaths in the forest caused the Marquis to fall, a fate he is here to stop. Back in the present, Dew is frantically trying to make up for Colin's bad attitude. But Marvin's friend snaps that Cornell's dog should keep its mouth shut. Daku is stunned into silence by how openly they were disrespected. As Colin steps up to Glenn and asks if he is the boastful one who claimed to become Lord, Glenn admits that Colin is truly strong, but warns him to drop his arrogant act before he seriously regrets it. Colin just stared right back at him, saying not a word and looking totally unimpressed. Glenn decides it's time to go, telling them they are thankful for the rescue, but must return home to finish their mission. But just as they turn to leave, the ground shakes and stops them all cold, while a huge flock of birds bursts from the trees, showing that something huge is about to move. Suddenly, a fresh horde of azure flame wolves explodes from the woods, leaving the guards frozen in shock at just how many there were. At the front of the wild crowd walks a huge, white-furred monster that one of the guards knows is the Azure King. This huge beast breaks through first, with its pack crashing through the clearing right behind it. The Alpha lets out a furious roar, its eyes burning with wild power as it blasts a huge wall of blue energy straight at the guards, who can only stare in horror as the deadly attack comes speeding toward them. Just as the Azure King's blast is about to wipe them out, Colin jumps right in front of the attack, blocking it all with just his sword and leaving Captain Glenn completely stunned. He barely gets to ask who this kid is before Colin just smirks and casually mentions he saved everyone again. The Azure King looks furious at being interrupted, but Colin doesn't wait, soaring through the air and smashing his sword down with his powerful Mountain Crusher move. The blow hits the beast right on its head, but Colin is shocked by how tough it really is. The Wolf King fires back a huge burst of power that sends Colin flying backward, but the hero manages to catch the shock and stop it from hurting him. As he touches down, he feels the ground shake beneath his weak form and knows that sword skills alone won't be enough to win this fight. The other guards rush to his side with a single warning. This beast has already brought down many of the Empire's finest. The Azure King shakes off the blow without flinching and calls its whole pack to rush the guards. The whole team starts to panic, realizing they can't even handle the little minions, much less the king. But Colin just tells them not to worry about the pack, dismissing them as nothing more than the king's puppets. He tells the wolves are just mindless puppets, so killing the king is the only way, which shocks Captain Glenn and gets a man to point out it's impossible because Colin's sword is broken. But Colin just smirks and says they'll know when they try, making the guard think the servant has gone mad. The rest of the squad is terrified, bracing themselves for a direct charge from the pack of suicides. Colin tells them not to rush into a dangerous attack, saying with confidence that a chance to strike will come soon. As if on cue, the Azure King lets out a low, threatening growl before unleashing a massive roar that sends its entire pack charging forward. As the guards brace themselves for the incoming wave and Glenn yells for an intercept, Colin stays calm and tells everyone to hold their ground, urging them to lure the enemy closer rather than charging in head-on. Marvin's friend instantly snaps back, asking how a servant ever got the right to give them orders. But Glenn shuts him down and decides to trust Colin's judgment for now. Colin then turns to Daku and asks the young guard to come with him, challenging him to become the kind of brother his little sister would be proud of. Hearing about his sister Erica gave Daku the strength he needed to keep going, just as Glenn shouts a warning that the wolves are about to crash into their lines. But just as the guards get ready to clash, Colin shouts at them to hold their ground. Colin quietly tells his team to let the wolves rush right up to them before he shouts now, and leaps over the front line with Do in tow. And while they are in the air, he orders Captain Glenn to start their holy formation shield. Glenn slashes out a giant golden wall to freeze the first wave in its tracks, so Colin yells at Marvin to strike. And even though Marvin is grumpy, he smashes the charging pack with a powerful ground slam called Heaven Shaker. Colin then asks the female guard, Sierra, to use her special phantom blade to clear a path for them. Her quick attacks slice straight through the last of the monsters. Captain Glenn stands frozen in shock, realizing this servant knows every sword trick they've learned, just as Colin tells Daku it's time to strike. As they rush through the fresh path, Colin yells at Daku not to hold them back, leaving the young guard so confused he can't even tell what's going on. Two of them sprint past the fallen wolves, racing straight for the king, while Daku desperately tries to figure out Colin's plan. Colin says the Azure King is used to fear, so a sudden, fearless rush will shake it because humans get spooked by aggression they didn't see coming. He then shows that once they close the distance, the king loses its long-range strikes, letting Daku finally realize Colin might be planning to use magic instead of a sword. Colin rushes to pull a huge surge of power into his hands, releasing his fully healed magic to draw a glowing circle from his book called Ice Lotus directly in the Azure King's way. He shoots a shower of ice shards at the charging beast, leaving Daku so shocked that a servant could cast magic. The Azure King just keeps taking the blows, his face more twisted in rage than ever, while Colin only grins and mocks the monster for feeling so sure of itself, which pushes the Wolf King to the breaking point until Colin signals Daku to strike. The young guard rushes right at the huge beast without a second thought, jumps on top of it, and hits its neck hard while it isn't paying attention. Meanwhile, Colin is readying his final move and telling the wolf that its time is up. He called forth a towering blue ghost knight holding a giant sword. The ghostly warrior stands tall above the Azure King, waiting to strike, while the monster lifts its head just in time to see the terrible fate rushing at it. The spectral knight swings its massive blade down with such crushing power that it blows the king's head right off. The blast throws the beast's body through the air and shatters it into pieces before it even hits the ground. Daku just stood there staring at what was left behind, completely stunned and unable to believe his eyes. Now that the fight is done, Colin just stands there holding the magic crystal, looking totally unbothered. Daku is still trying to get his head around the idea that a servant can cast magic, while Captain Glenn rushes over to check on them. Glenn thanked Colin for the rescue, saying the other wolves ran away the moment the king fell. Colin acts like everything is fine, claiming the plan worked, but Glenn knows they would have been completely wiped out without him. The Lord carefully lifts a glowing piece of the crystal shard, his eyes wide with wonder as he looks at the strange power this young person hides. Meanwhile, Marvin's friend starts chuckling and says Colin looks just like the big guy from back in the day. When Daku looks confused, the man explains that he's talking about Lord Darius, their former commander. He says they were all part of the Lionheart Brigade before calling Sir the Old Hag's lapdog. Daku has been listening to this guy talk nonsense the whole time, and finally, he's had enough. He snaps, screaming in rage that he's being called a lapdog for Cornell. He strides right up to Sir and warns the old lady she'd better remember his name. The man's eyes went wide because he had just struck right at her deepest fear. His friend tries to warn him that calling Sir an old hag is a terrible mistake, and the moment of realization hits Daku hard. The old man storms up close, his face twisted in rage as he demands to know how she could possibly be such a woman. She keeps telling everyone she's a vibrant young woman in her prime, but thanks very much. But Daku, trying to double down, claims she's not that young and it hurts to watch, which makes her snap and start throttling him while the other guards try to break it up. Colin watches the whole fight turn into a friendly brawl with a flat, unamused look on his face. Their happy moment ends abruptly when a horse's heavy hoof stomps down right in front of them. A nobleman on a horse interrupts their quiet moment to ask about the noise, and while the guards instantly recognize him as the young Master Fried to Colin's annoyance, Daku freezes in terror like he's just seen a ghost. The whole squad, Captain Glenn included, drops to one knee as Fried explains he heard the noise. He glances around at the mess left by the fight, while Glenn tells him they got tricked by a pack of azure flames while they were looking for something. The captain gives full credit to Colin and Daku, admitting they saved them from becoming monster food, which naturally draws Fried's attention to Colin as he casually pulls his sword out of a dead wolf's neck while inspecting it. Glenn asks Fried to share their wins, but the young master is unimpressed, secretly thinking Glenn is trying to steal his father's spot and fearing his own future in the family line is now in danger. His face instantly turns sour with jealousy and fear, and he decided right then how to handle the situation by turning his attention to Daku. Fried sneers at Daku for disappearing, only to pop up again running with a servant, screaming that Daku broke the rules by bringing a commoner into the hunting grounds to steal his prize. He bluntly calls Daku a worthless man, leaving the young guard completely stunned. Fried sharpens his knife and warns that if he gets hurt, Erika, Daku's sister, will pay the price, reminding him of a lesson from their past. Just as Daku tries to move, Colin jumps in and retorts that it's better than being a mama's boy. Colin just smirks and greets the pompous noble casually, which makes Sierra and the other guards barely hold back a snort while Fried explodes with anger and demands to know what a servant just called him. Colin keeps pointing out that the guards aren't bowing to Fried's skill, but just because his mom is a countess, which shocks the other servants, and he goes further to mock them by saying it must feel great to ride on your parents' coattails. When Fried threatens to have him killed, Colin calmly agrees, but then twists the knife by saying he'd need to ask his mommy for permission first, even acting out the pathetic request with a smug grin, which sends Fried into a screaming tantrum. Suddenly, magic chains burst from the earth and tie Colin up tight. His eyes widen in shock just as he is suddenly held fast, unable to move an inch, while shadowy figures with bony masks rise from the ground and grip him with cold chains. One of them steps up right behind Colin with a blade at his throat, and the whole squad instantly knows they're the feared Empire Blades. Sierra tells us they're from the Williams family, a clan of assassins so terrifying that even nobles shake with fear at the sound of their name. It turns out Fried's mom is the scary head of this dangerous family, and she means business. One of the killers warns Fried not to do anything rash just yet. Captain Glenn rushes to explain that these assassins are here to help on Cornell's orders, but Fried just stares him down and asks if Glenn plans to go against him as well. Captain Glenn tries to argue, but the noble's power leaves him no choice. Even while still in chains, Colin calmly tells him to drop it and go report their findings to the Lord. Glenn and Sir instantly see that the kid is giving them a perfect way out, so Sir whispers they can't pick a side, and they must leave right now. The captain clenches his jaw, despising the thought of leaving Colin behind. But since there's no other way out, he orders his team to go, and they slowly turn around as Fried grins like a winner. The arrogant nobleman turns back to Colin and sneers, telling him how weak he has become. But Colin just grins and tells him to get on with it if he's going to do something. Fried just laughs at how easily he can control things, and then while pulling his sword out, he comes up with what he calls a brilliant idea. He shouts Daku's name, freezing the young guard in his tracks with a twisted grin that warns him every action brings a price. Fried tosses his sword onto the ground right before Daku, giving him a last chance to fix things by slaying the slave for him. Daku freezes in shock, unable to grasp Fried's terrible demand, even as the old man promises to look the other way if Daku does just this one thing. Then the story jumps back to a month after the demons arrived, showing Colin beaten inside a monster camp as a man raises a sword to kill him. But Colin stares up from the dirt with a defiant glare, refusing to break. The scene shifts back in time to show a monster king laughing at Colin's dream of being a hero, then offering to let the other humans go if they agree to one terrible deal. Colin has to personally kill his own friend who is being held by another monster. This man, who we now know as Daku, pleads with him from the past not to go through with it. But the monster king just grins with sadistic delight, demanding to know what Colin will choose. Colin grabs the sword without saying a word and slowly walks toward his friend, blade ready. Suddenly, Daku sees his life flash before him, recalling his father's death on his sister's birthday and the time he had to hug and comfort young Erica after they became orphans. He remembers how they lived as slaves until Lord Darius rescued them and gave them a fresh start. Daku reveals that Erica was sent to the Williams estate, where she thinks she is safe from the demons. With tears running down his face, he asks Colin one last thing, to take care of her. He even shares small things, like how she's a picky eater who shouldn't be spoiled, and tells Colin to let Erica know that her big brother died an honorable death as a knight. Colin can only ask Daku for forgiveness, his face dark with regret as he gets ready to hit him. The memory fades, jolting us back to the real world, where Daku is forced to make that same impossible choice again. Colin remains trapped in chains at Fried's mercy, while Daku shakes in fear, clutching the sword Fried tossed at his feet, but Fried is losing his patience and screaming at Daku to stop hesitating. After finally finding the courage to stand up, Daku refuses to kill the man who just saved them all, but Fried just smirks and asks how Erica will feel when she learns her brother threw his life away for a stranger. The threat strikes Daku right in his weakness, just as planned, as Fried casually drops that he's got some fresh news about his sister from the Williams family. He insists she was skipping meals and passed out from exhaustion last week just to buy a sword for Daku. This truth breaks Daku completely, his face crumpling with sheer horror and fury. Fry lands a final hit, warning that she'll stop caring for Erica if Daku is just going to leave her. It takes just one thing to shatter Daku, sending him crashing to his knees in raw desperation as he begs the young master, please, just save his sister. As Fried turns back with a satisfied smile, he repeats his cruel order with a sadistic grin. Kill him. Instead of getting scared, Colin just laughs and asks if that's really the plan. He's laughing so hard that even being chained up by assassins doesn't bother him, which really irks Fried and makes him demand to know what's so funny. Colin just grins back, retorting that even a stray dog knows how to bark, then suggests a more entertaining alternative, a fight to the death between him and Daku. That sudden boldness leaves Fried spinning, wondering exactly what's going through Colin's head. One of the killers gives him a quick look to see what's going on. Fried quickly realizes Colin is just bluffing, pretending to be brave, while secretly terrified of the Empire's blades. Fried can't wait for the fight to start, so he's shouting excitedly about it. With the assassins retreating, Colin and Daku stand alone in the clearing, facing each other. Daku lifts his sword, his face twisted in pain and doubt as he asks Colin if he truly means to do this. From his horse, Fried urgently tells Daku not to hesitate, warning him of the terrible fate that awaits his precious little sister if he does. Before Daku can do anything, Colin springs into action and starts the fight with a mighty jump. Daku just barely raises his guard to block the wild downward slash. Colin is so fast he uses his own push to spin away and move instantly, leaving Daku totally stunned by how quick and clever his opponent is. Colin rushes in without stopping to hit Daku again, who struggles to block the fast and strong strikes with his sword. Colin is clearly in a league of his own, his glowing eyes locked on Daku as he easily overpowers him. He apologizes and says he doesn't want to die, which snaps something inside the young guard and makes his eyes flare with rage. Daku lets out a scream and swings wildly, but Colin blocks the desperate strike with ease and follows up with a solid kick that sends Daku stumbling backward. From the sidelines, Fried flashes a smug grin with 3 fingers raised, while Colin chuckles confidently, promising to finish it all in just 3 tries. Daku could only stare in stunned silence, finally feeling the huge and scary distance between them. Daku stares back with anger, declaring he doesn't need 3 strikes to win, and then raises the stakes by saying he'll end it all in just 3 seconds. Colin just smirked back, totally unimpressed by the kid's sudden confidence, while Fried just scoffed from his high horse. Daku charges in with a mighty overhead slash, forcing Colin to raise his blade to meet it, and as their swords collide, Daku shouts that he won't leave his friends behind, a line that suddenly reminds Colin of a hooded stranger who once said the very same thing. That vision rattles him so badly he breaks out in a cold sweat. Even the masked killer looks totally confused by this sudden twist, because in the next heartbeat Colin and Daku spin to face each other's backs, just as a huge blue energy shockwave blasts from them, ripping the ground apart. The blast knocks the other servants backward, and even makes Fried's horse leap in fear. The arrogant noble just stands there, eyes wide with shock, his smug grin completely vanished. As Daku dives through the air, slashing his sword straight for Fried's head. He screams in rage and brings his blade down with all his strength, but Fried just stares back as a dark purple glow suddenly surrounds him. He freezes the attack in its tracks, grabbing the sword with his bare hand without flinching, and smirks as he realizes Daku might actually be a threat after all. Daku glares right back at Fried, letting him know not to underestimate him, even for a second. The explosion blasts them apart, with Daku landing on his feet right in the middle of the Empire's deadly blades. Colin's eyes go wide in shock, because he never expected the kid to have so much power. Fried, truly scared for once, yells at his men to stay back. But his assassins don't listen, already leaping in with chains to grab Daku and force Fried to power up one more time, so he could be the one to end this. Colin just watches the chaos unfold with a blank face while Fried screams in rage and unleashes a huge blast of lightning magic. As a powerful magic circle forms from the energy he holds, one of the other servants freaks out at the sight. Just as a system window springs up to spot Colin's magic, he smirks, knowing chaos is coming. It turns out he can spot Fried stats and intermediate lightning magic, but he has no defense against it at all. Even though the system warns Collins he can't take it, he is already working it out. He grips a handful of blue crystals, knowing he won't be sure until he acts, while Fried roars that he's about to show Daku what raw power looks like. He throws a huge bolt of lightning shaped like a wolf straight at the young guard, but it crashes into a giant wall of ice rising from the ground behind Colin, who stands calm and completely stops the attack. The lightning wolf crashes into the ice wall and explodes in a blast so bright Fried can't even tell if it was real magic or a fake trick. As the explosion of the ice barrier sends the noble and his horse flying backward in shock, he can only stare in stunned disbelief, completely baffled by the sudden appearance of such powerful magic. As Colin's voice booms through the smoke, daring him to show more, our boy stands untouched and calls the noble a failure. The other servants just stand there, staring in shock that he is still alive after that. But Fried stubbornly refuses to believe that a simple slave could ever hold such magical power. He powers up again, screaming that this can't be real. Colin steeling himself for the next strike, refusing to give up here. But then a warning window flashes on the screen, telling him his mana is gone, so he stumbles weakly as the power vanishes and Fried seizes the chance to blast him with another huge wave of lightning. This time, Colin stands right in the heart of the storm with no way to protect himself. Fry screams with all his rage, pouring it into the spell to make him die. A sudden flash of raw power swallows Colin's spot, and as lightning strikes him, he begins to wonder if this is the end. He thinks he's about to die right after finally getting a second chance at life. Suddenly, a fresh warning flashes, telling me that using magic now could turn me into a rampaging monster. Colin refuses to fall, roaring that he won't die here as wild blue energy erupts from him, forming a demonic armor around his arm and shoulder. The system panics instantly, marking Colin's stats as unknown and losing the ability to read his data, while Colin's eyes blaze with a menacing purple glow as he embraces his sudden new power, leaving Daku clutching his head in agony and utterly confused by the changes happening to his own body. Then he glares at Colin, warning him that this fierce rage won't last long, which is a very scary thing to hear. Fry sees his two targets getting stronger, so he decides he's had enough and blasts them with a huge lightning spell to end it, shocking one of his servants who has never seen magic look like that before. But it is Daku who strikes first, launching himself into the air with his sword glowing with a strange blue light, screaming in fury as he rockets straight at the arrogant noble on his horse. He slashes his sword at the ground instead of Fried, building a huge wall of ice just like Colin did before. So Fried gets caught off guard and throws up an arm to protect himself as the shockwave knocks the noble and his scared horse stumbling backward. While Colin watches from the sidelines with a serious, focused look, he remains firmly in control. In the blink of an eye, Daku lunges into Fried's face, clamping a hand around the lightning-shockling arm, which makes Fried's eyes blaze with the fury of a master who isn't used to having a slave touch him. He clenches his teeth in fear as he realizes he's in deep trouble right when their power blasts outward, hitting everything around them with a massive shockwave. Fried is launched off his horse with a curse on his lips as he flies through the air, while Colin stands calm and ready, watching the mess he helped create. Fried looks way too calm after crashing hard off his horse, wrongly thinking Daku is done for as he begins to soak up an insane amount of purple lightning to unleash a huge spell. With Daku glowing blue and charging forward with his sword to finally end the fight, he screams as he aims at the smug noble, their powers clashing in a huge explosion of blue and light. But right in the middle of their struggle, Colin's golden magic circle suddenly appears between them to stop the attack instantly. The impact flings Fried stumbling backward out of balance, revealing an older man who calmly shuts the fight down by reminding them this place is for hunting, not their personal battle, and suggests they can fight when they get back home if they really want to. Fried freezes in shock when he sees the man is his father, a man Colin already knows as Darius. With the battle finally over, Daku's strength runs out, and he collapses to his knees, while Darius watches him fall with a cold, unimpressed look, finally able to rest after pushing himself to the limit. A few days later, he stirred beneath a grand chandelier, still groggy and confused about his location until the fight and Colin's scary change suddenly flooded his mind. Daku suddenly jerks awake in a strange, much nicer room, staring at his hands in shock as he realizes he truly made it back to the past. A voice interrupts, revealing Colin has finally gotten up, which sends Daku into a panic as Colin flashes a grin that looks far more unsettling than friendly. It turns out Daku fainted cold right after that huge fight with Fried, and a quick flashback shows Colin carrying him while everyone else panicked around them. Colin admits the scene was a bit too much, but notes Daku is looking better and suggests they go thank everyone for their help. Daku looks shocked at first, but he nods and agrees to go along. Even Colin throws in a personal thank you while giving a cheesy little wink. Daku was actually shocked, since he never thought the guy had a grateful bone in his body. As they strolled through the town square, people began to stare strangely, and a group of guys froze in their tracks to gawk at Colin. Daku is clueless about the trouble ahead, but the gossip is loud as two maids whisper nearby about the fight between Colin and Fried. Colin hears his name, rushes over to ask what they're saying, and the maids spin around in terror, screaming as if they've spotted a monster. Daku says they're acting like they just spotted a ghost. That word sticks with Colin as he looks like he's finally putting the pieces together. Daku teases Colin for looking like a pale ghost, but Colin immediately retorts that Daku is the one causing him to worry, until their squabble is suddenly interrupted by a group of guards, led by a one-eyed captain who sarcastically welcomes Daku as the future lord while warning Colin to stay out of it since he's here to settle their old score with Daku. Colin just watches the guy try to act tough and promise it won't happen again, but Colin just looks completely unimpressed. He turns and glares at his own men, confused that nobody moves, so he starts shouting at the guard squad for ignoring his signal to attack. Colin stands as still as a frozen statue, not even flinching, while the one-eyed man turns livid and screams at them for forgetting such a simple order. His men are so scared they're whispering that Collins is a monster who fought Fried, but Daku just smiles at their fear while their leader calls them cowards, so he realizes he must fight back instead of losing face, grabs Daku by the collar, and accuses him of betraying Fried. Daku just glares back, not impressed by the man's foolish loyalty, and winds up a punch to punish him in his lord's name. But his fist hits something solid and stops dead, leaving him frozen in shock by the unexpected block. Daku grabbed the punch himself and told the guard he had no right to judge him. Colin casually grabs the man's other arm, adding a little extra pressure to the situation. The other guards can't believe their eyes as their leader is stunned that Daku actually fought back. But the peace is broken by a new voice demanding to know what the noise is about just now. And suddenly 3 armored figures stride into the square, instantly grabbing the guard leader's attention, who grins nastily. Convinced Du and Colin are finished now that the Royal Knights have arrived, and when the lead knight asks what's happening, the one-eyed man jumps at the chance to explain. He points a finger and claims he was just showing a few silly slaves how to act. Instead of helping him out, one knight just waves hello to our guys, which makes the guard leader furious, grabs the knight, and demands to know what he's doing. The knight easily pushes him away, making Daku laugh as he reveals he bet on Daku waking up, leaving the guard confused while his friends confirm they were in on the joke and owe the woman a drink for winning. That one-eyed man stared in disbelief, wondering if he was actually dreaming this whole thing. He grumbled that it goes against the rules for royal knights to be so friendly with a servant. But the female knight just wraps an arm around him and coldly tells him those old rules mean nothing to them. With that, the knights grab Daku and Colin and drag them away, leaving the one-eyed man standing there totally shocked. Daku thanks them with a shy smile, admitting he owes them another favor, so the whole group heads to a local tavern to celebrate together. He said he just wanted to say thanks for saving him, but he ended up needing to be saved all over again. Female knight Sierra lets out a triumphant laugh, confirming that her plan worked perfectly to silence the vice captain who had been driving her crazy, and when a companion asks if they have a personal grudge, she just slams her mug down and yells that talking about it will ruin her drink. Their leader clears his throat to silence the crowd and tells everyone they need to have a serious chat with Daku and Colin. He says only 3 royal knights remain and invites them to join, leaving Daku shocked. The knight nods and says they get the same perks as top servants, but Colin just takes a slow sip of his drink without even flinching, clearly not interested in becoming a royal knight. He explains that his sights are set on an even bigger dream, adds a confident wink, and leaves the three knights speechless until the brown-haired one warns Daku not to get cocky about becoming Lord of the Rhine just for beating Fried. Sir quickly corrects him, showing that Daku's strange sword move was actually magic, and if her guess is right, he used azure magic to defeat the king, which the king himself admitted. The brown-haired knight sneers at the former slave's claim to know magic, so their leader turns to Colin for an explanation, and as Colin realizes he must talk his way out of this mess, Sira goes wild with panic as she finally connects all the dots. While Colin quietly congratulates himself for his quick thinking, Sir is suddenly so excited he spills the beans to Daku about reclaiming his rightful place as a noble instead of slave, leaving everyone at the table speechless. She takes his hands, eyes wide with excitement over her clever guess, and explains how he is actually a kidnapped orphan forced to work as a slave, now here to get his power back and take everything he lost. Daku sits stunned, wondering where she found that story, right as Colin bursts into laughter and loudly plays along, cheering her on for guessing his secret and proving her crazy theory right. He dives into a soap opera tale about a noble from Ale who got blamed by a secret plot. He vows that one day he will make the nobles who ruined his life pay for everything. Daku can't believe this is actually working, even though two people are hooked, because their captain would never buy into it. The captain is tricked and promises to keep Daku's secret safe, though he sternly warns him never to use magic in front of the lady or Fried, leaving Daku in shock. Once that was done, the captain said the Marquis wants to see Daku now that he is finally awake. As Daku and Colin walk toward the big tent, the royal knight, Captain, watches them leave. His fellow knights wait silently behind him while he can't stop thinking about the Ale City part of their tale, and he clearly doesn't believe everything they say. Meanwhile, Daku can't believe Colin's fake story worked, so he asks why Colin pretended to be a disgraced noble from AE City. Colin smiles and says it's the perfect lie because a chaotic city far from Ryan makes any investigation a nightmare. Daku seems to be slowly realizing Colin's manipulative tricks, but then he abruptly shifts the conversation to the strange three-legged crow hand gesture Colin made earlier, which has been bothering him. He suspects it's just another trick to fool people, but Colin's serious face tells a different story, instantly sending Daku back to a terrifying moment from his past. He remembers Colin standing tough in his armor, saying sorry just before the fight, then in a quick flash of steel, Colin brings down the monster that had taken Daku. Colin coldly orders the creature to send its final words, then instantly swings the same sword at Daku, telling him to send his own message. He leaps forward, his sword humming with a dark, dangerous power. The sword burns with a scary purple light, and Daku stands frozen as he watches his own death coming closer. The magical sword drives deep into Daku's chest, while Colin clenches his teeth in pain as he lands the final strike. The monster laughs and mocks Colin, daring him to believe someone like him could land the final hit. But Daku shouts from the side, warning Colin that he's still being held up here. He holds his sword ready to show he is still fighting. Their defiance only makes the monster furious, so Colin leaps forward and slashes Daku, leaving the beast stunned as the blade seems to vanish right through his body. But the voice was faint because Colin was busy attacking the monster standing right behind him. The flashback fades, and we're back to them arguing about Colin calling Daku's last words lame, which triggers another memory of them fighting together with Colin yelling at Daku for being reckless and telling him to thank him for saving him instead of complaining about how it was done. Daku insists that even if he killed the hostage, their foes wouldn't have simply let them walk away. So while they argue in the middle of the fight, Colin keeps shouting for a sign to launch their surprise attacks. Meanwhile, a crowd of rescued villagers awkwardly watches the two heroes bicker, whispering that Dao was just crying for a girl named Erica a moment ago. Back in the present, Daku cuts straight to the point about the hand gesture, and Colin explains it is the three-legged crow sign he learned from a man named Ran, a signal that promises help from any comrade who sees it. Daku just stares at the sign, thinking hard about how this info could save his life, then instantly makes a sarcastic joke asking if Colin is planning to get captured again, just to use it. Colin just smirks and admits he learned this trick from someone specific, but that person is already dead. Colin finishes his sad tale about a brother he was forced to kill, leaving Dolly confused and wondering if he ever knew such a person when he was a slave. Their quick conversation ends as they reach the mayor's room and are told to go inside. And the two of them step into a huge hall to stand before the head of the house. Mary's first worry is for Colin, who flashes a confident smile to assure her he's fully recovered, while Daku gives a stiff, nervous greeting that shows he's on edge. Now that the small talk is over, the Marquis's face grows serious as he explains why he summoned them, to talk about what happened in the hunting grounds. Daku panics, fearing they're about to let Fried leave without permission, only for the Marquis to shift focus and begin sharing stories of Glenn and his men, remembering the countless life-or-death battles they survived together. He confesses that losing them after everything they've been through is impossible to imagine, then sincerely thanks Du and Colin for saving the 3 knights who survived. Daku looks down and wishes they had seen the danger coming sooner to save more of them, but the Marquis gets angry, insisting they did nothing wrong and that the failure to see the attack was his alone. He then pivots to ask the elite knights for their answer directly, but Colin quickly apologizes and turns down the offer again, so the Marquis turns to Daku for his decision. Now that Colin has stepped aside, the Marquis turns to Daku and offers him the spot, sending him into a panic as he stammers that he isn't even an official guard yet and struggles to handle the sudden weight of the offer until he finally clenches his fists and shouts that he absolutely wants to be an elite knight. The Marquis looks satisfied, then turns back to Colin for more orders, while Colin gives Daku a quiet signal that he's got it under control. He calmly asks to swap Erica, Daku's little sister, from the Williams family to the Hall family, a request that leaves Daku completely shocked. Colin tells us the 2 siblings stayed together until they were separated right here, noting that she is very frail and Daku desperately wants to stay by her side. The Marquis hears the entire tale before asking if this really is Colin's true wish. Colin frames it as a matter of loyalty, saying that he and Dao are comrades who fought together, leaving Daku completely moved that Colin would honor even one small request for him. Colin bows his head and makes one last, serious request to the Marquis. Please bring Daku's sister back. The old man's heart seems to jump a beat as he looks at a picture of his crew, so he agrees to move Daku, but says it won't be quick before kicking him out of the room. Daku pauses for a second, casts a worried glance at Colin, and then heads out. Now that they're alone, the Marquis heads for the window, leaving Colin standing all by himself in the huge hall. He then asks Colin if he remembers challenging Suno to a match in the arena, admitting that from that moment on, he knew Colin was no ordinary slave. Marquis admitted he was shocked that Colin took a magic hit without a scratch, but what really grabbed his attention was the power Colin showed when he fought Fried a few days ago. That dark, crushing power wasn't something an ordinary person could handle, so he reached out to the entire group of nobles who had been hunted down in A's Tale. They pointed out that someone just trying to get their life back wouldn't need such power. Realizing his secret is out, Colin steps up to the Marquis, introduces himself as Darius, and blasts a powerful spell of crystal energy while pretending to be just an average guy who can do a little magic, then smirks and asks if he looks like a joke to a master mage like him. The Marquis looked unamused and couldn't quite believe that a regular person could pull that off. He dives straight into the question, pressing hard to find out exactly who Colin truly is. Colin spins around, calls the Marquis a noble lord who cares more for skill than family blood, draws his sword to swear loyalty to that belief, promises to wipe out the world's hate for bloodline supremacy, kneels to declare he will one day be a great lord just like him, and then shouts with a burst of fire that he will eventually go even further than the Lord. Colin tells the old man he has already saved him twice and asks for a chance to prove himself, inviting the Marquis to judge him by how he uses his power in the coming test. The crowd's bold shout finally sparks a reaction, and the Marquis, now truly interested, nods and agrees to a challenge while smirking at Colin, who tries to leave but is stopped with one last question. He presses Colin for an honest opinion on a man named Ran, a name that means nothing to our boy. Seeing him truly confused, the Marquis instantly changes his mind and sends him away. Once Colin leaves the Grand Hall, the Marquis turns to a man named Cornell who has been hiding in the room and crackling with purple energy, declaring that if Colin is just an ordinary guy, then he is a once-in-a-generation genius. Cornell shows that Colin's behavior proves he doesn't really know Ran, which completely ruins his story about the AE city. He's sure Colin wants something hidden and tells the Marquis to stay on their toes. The old man nods, saying this has happened before, and his gaze wanders to a picture of a red-haired woman hanging on the wall. Before Cornell can even think about it, his helper rushes in with urgent news from a spirit cat. The Marquis eagerly grabs the sealed letter to peek at the new secrets its network found, while the same curious spirit cat returns to Colin's room, where Colin shows off the huge pile of supplies he got by swapping the letter's contents. With all these fresh potions and supplies, he's sure his strength is about to explode. But he can't stop thinking about that last question, still trying to figure out who the real culprit is. Colin thinks about the name Ran, recalling that he'd only heard it from Daku in his past life. The way the Marquis asked about him felt like a test, as if Colin should have known the guy. He mixes one of his new potions, deciding to put the mystery on the back burner for now, since grilling.